Hello, in today's tutorial we're taking a look over the purchase order section. We'll understand how we add a purchase order, how we can further edit the purchase order, and indeed how we go about receiving a purchase order when the items we have purchased arrive on site. If any of you have already viewed any of the videos to do with adding a sales order or quotation, the process for adding a purchase order is very similar with a few key differences for this section. Let's get started. Purchase orders and add. The first question we are asked is to identify the business for which we will be providing this purchase order. I know there's a supplier called Test, so as we can see, as soon as we started typing, it identified that particular business and entered it here for us. Of course, if there was more than one business with a similar name, it would instead display a list and you could select. On this side we can see all of the ingredients or items, bottles, lids we buy from this supplier will appear in this list here. We can click to see more information about the product. We can see its internal name and some of the key pertinent information, our purchase price for example. If we have this linked to any other ingredients, links here would appear also, and of course if we were able to purchase this item from other suppliers as well as this one, buttons would appear here as well for us to be able to see that. In this case we're looking to add just that ingredient to our purchase order, so we click the add button. As you can see, it's put it into our basket. Here we can identify how many units we are looking to purchase. The purchase price, this will be pre-populated with the last stored default purchase price and the expected delivery date. We can, if we wish, amend this on the fly to be a new purchase price which we've either negotiated with the supplier or been provided at the point of order. In this case, let's say I now know that this is only £9.97 a unit. If we're purchasing something which isn't a specific RM already, we just purchase it as a one-off, you can, if you wish, enter a simple description for what you are purchasing, the total cost of the items and whether or not it's VATable. Here we can see our subtotal, shipping charges, VAT, grand total, etc. One key piece of information is this one. If we say here yes to this drop down, what we would do is it will take the new lower price in this case that I've added and overwrite this price with it, so £9.97 would become the new default price for this item, updating your costs across the board. However, if you say no, it would just simply leave it at £10 in the main for most purchases, but this one may have been a one-off for example. In some cases, when you're adding a purchase order, you may wish to add to the purchase order a specific note that you want to make your supplier aware of. It could be something like driving directions to your premises, something specific to do with how you want the products that you're purchasing delivered, etc. You can type in this box. Also, if you've seen the admin videos for example, you'll know this already, you can set a list of predefined pieces of text which you may wish to add to numerous purchase orders, and you could select them from here. So I've already set one up called the directions to our premises. I click that, it pre-populates this box with that information. Obviously in a real life scenario you'd have more than just this, you'd have the full directions for example. I don't need to say anything in this case, so I'll get rid of that. Purchase order date, in some cases you may wish to predate or post-date it, you can change that. And the final key piece of information, if you know that any of these sales orders which are shown here, which are the ones shown as weight and FP ingredients, if any of these will be helped by the purchase of this sales order, you can attribute them to the individual sales order by clicking the box here. So as an example, let's say for example that I know that this demo ingredient is being waited on in this purchase order, this sales order is waiting on that ingredient coming in. I'll click to link it. All that means is that when someone looks at this sales order ID 5, they'll be able to see that a purchase order is being linked to it and know that there are items due in. We'll click Save to System and the purchase order will be saved. If we go to a sales order now, I'll show you what that would look like. You'll be taken through to this page. You can see that it's been added and then edited by myself. On this page we can go straight through to the supplier. We can choose to print it, download it, email it to the supplier, or manually set as complete, which I'll get to in a short while. One key piece of information which you'll find useful is when you go to email to the supplier, it will automatically select the correct contact, the main contact of the supplier. You also get the opportunity to copy in any of the subcontacts against that supplier. You will also get a subject line pre-filled and some standard email text. Again, if you wish, you can select one of the pre-populated lists to tell your customer, or you can overwrite this. If you're overwriting the text that the supplier would get as part of their purchase order email, and you wanted to store what you've said in the notes, you update that by saying yes, and it would store the details of your email in the notes against the purchase order. One final key point: if you are ordering something which you already have the artwork stored for, so in most cases that would be a label. So let's say, for example, this purchase order is for a label and you're emailing it to your label producer. The artwork which is stored on file against that RM will automatically be included, if this box is ticked, which it would be by default, in the email sent to your supplier. The only proviso for that would be if the artwork file was more than 20 megabytes, it wouldn't attempt to send it, but it would warn you of that. How this helps is that when the supplier gets their purchase order, as well as getting the purchase order from yourselves with all of the right information, they even get the artwork already. So they will be able to produce the file very quickly and have your artwork back ready to you much quicker using this method. The final piece of the puzzle is to understand how we deal with a purchase order when it arrives on site. All purchase orders which are currently outstanding would appear in the list under purchase orders and then find. And here we can see we have 2. All the others could be found at any point in the future by searching via these fields. However, for now we'll take a look at this particular one, which we can see has got a status of pending, which means that it is yet to be received. When this item arrived on site, we would click the Receive button. In this Receive page, it shows us a list of all of the outstanding items which were stored against this purchase order. We can see the purchase order date and some other pertinent information. But let's look at each box. Here we can see that this item was ordered, 100 were ordered, and 100 have yet to be received, i.e. we haven't received any. Here we would enter the amount we have received today. If this was a part delivery, for example, we could enter a lesser amount. And we'd fill in these fields as appropriate. In some cases you may not need to fill in all of them, however they are all there just in case. You've got things like expiration date, batch code number, where you're putting it in terms of its location. If you need to print any labels, your own internal labels to go across it, you can select them, and the label weight that you want, that you want to appear on that particular label. This would come in handy in a particular scenario. Let's say, for example, you have bought 35 kilos of a particular ingredient. Ingredients generally come in 25 kilo drums. So you may have had, that may say 100 kilos for example, that may say I've had 30 kilos of it. Obviously it goes orange because it knows I'm not yet approaching my 100 weight maximum. But I'll say I want 2 labels. And it'll say what's the label weight on none. I'll say 25 kilos, but this one I'll just say is only 5 kilos. What would happen, if we'll see how this works, is it will now create the labels for me. I've received the item, it says it's not yet complete, it knows that there's still some outstanding, but it's created the labels for me. We can see here the label that it's created, which we could print on our normal 4x6 label printer and stick on the outside of our boxes, shows us a lot of information, but it does show us that the first box is 25 kilos and the second box is only 5 kilos. Nice and easy to apply. Finally, if we go back to a purchase order, we go into the one that we've just dealt with, we can now see that previously where we had 100 outstanding, because I've already received 30, you can see that this only shows us 70 outstanding now, and we could have received more as we went on. When the system automatically recognizes that every single item is now fully received, the status of the overall purchase order will be changed to complete, and the purchase order would drop off this main page. However, one of the things which may become apparent is you may place a purchase order for, in this case, 100 kilos. You may only get the 30 kilos we'd originally booked in, and your supplier may then say, I can't supply with that 70. Rather than have this hanging around, you can go into the purchase order, manually set as complete, add a note to say that you've written it off because you don't need you're not going to receive the rest of the kilograms, or you no longer need them, for example, and that would also move the purchase order to the end of its natural run. That concludes the video for purchase order management. I hope you've enjoyed it.